goes up along with executive pay packages. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that last year, CEOs at America's top companies earned 300 times more than the typical worker. But calculating the new executive tax is complicated because CEO compensation often includes stock and other benefits. The city says it could generate up to $140 million a year. Other new taxes, an increase in the transfer tax on properties valued at $10 million or more. Revenues could be used for health care and affordable housing. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Databricks, simplifying data and AI. Thousands of data teams use Databricks Cloud Data Platform to innovate faster. Learn more at Databricks.com.
Worrying. Some of us have turned it into a part-time job these days. I just heard you. You said full-time job. Election, pandemic, recession. Worrying itself has a cost. Marketplace's Kristen Schwab talked to economists.
What's worrying Corey Leach these days?
What am I not worried about?
Leach is 34 and lives in Chicago with her husband and 2 daughters, a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. Yep, a pandemic baby. And having a new baby has heightened Leach's worries about COVID and climate change.
In the middle of the night when I'm feeding my daughter, there's definitely been moments where it's like, that's all I can think about. And you're doing this loving thing. You're feeding a baby, but you're looking down and not thinking about that love. You're thinking about, oh my God, I'm sorry for bringing you into the world.
Not being present in the moment is one of the biggest costs of worrying, says Frank Schilbach, a behavioral economist at MIT.
There's a budget that you have in your mind for mental energy that you can devote to different things. And if you worry a lot about things that are out of your control, well, then you have fewer cognitive resources available for other things in your life.
Worrying actually hijacks a piece of your brain, which can lead to sleep loss, careless mistakes at work, and even physical exhaustion. But worry also serves an important purpose, says Lisbeth Romer, a psychologist and co-author of the book Worry Less, Live More.
Thinking about what might happen in the future is an incredibly adaptive thing. It is very human and very natural for us to respond to threat and prepare for threat.
Worrying forces us to problem solve. But of course, not all problems are solvable. And just telling yourself to stop can actually make it worse.
We worry and worry feeds upon worry, and then we want to not worry, so we try not to worry, and now we're worrying about worrying.
How did we get here? Some of it's wiring, some of it's habit.
So we can learn it from it being modeled, if folks in our families worried a lot.
So what can we do?
I think different people find different things useful.
Sonia Bishop is a psychologist at UC Berkeley. She says some people practice mindfulness, others exercise. There are also studies that show actually scheduling a half hour to worry can help you focus outside that time block. And if none of those works,
if you're busy occupying your mind with something that's very cognitively challenging, then you literally can't engage in worrying.
Like me. Instead of worrying, I worked on this story about worrying. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
But there's some progress. Stock in Biogen rose 44% yesterday after the FDA said Biogen's Alzheimer's drug is showing, quote, exceptionally persuasive evidence that it slows progress of the dementia. Aducanumab is what they call the drug, which seems like something spelled backwards, but Bumuna Kuda doesn't mean anything either, other than the possibility of helping to address a terrible affliction. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. We're from APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Distracted driving is deadly. Teens? Yes, but adults too. And there are millions more adults than teens. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health knows time matters when it comes to stroke. Every minute a stroke goes untreated can mean an extra week of recovery. Recognize symptoms, including face drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulties. Act fast. Call 911.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9, coming to you from the banks of the St. Johns River in downtown Jacksonville. Listen anywhere, anytime on our app or WJCT.org.
Florida is now a red state, but Duval is trending blue. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, we'll take a closer look at how Northeast Florida voted on election night as we await final election results from around the country. That's coming up, then later.
So each day we'll start at a courthouse and run to the next courthouse, which happens to be about a marathon distance away, and we'll end up Saturday, November the 21st, in front of the Duval County Courthouse.
He's a local attorney and marathon runner, and now Mike Freed is running 6 marathons in a row, all to raise money for Jacksonville area legal aid. His Freed to Run journey, that's ahead this hour, plus how local restaurants are getting into the grocery business in this pandemic. It's all ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. Vote counting continues in several states as Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden gets closer to winning the Electoral College. NPR's Mara Liasson has more.
The Associated Press declared Michigan for Biden, giving him 264 electoral votes, just 6 shy of the 270 needed to win. So Biden needs just one more state, and Democrats are optimistic about winning Nevada, Georgia, and/or Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who has 214 electoral votes so far, is bringing a series of legal challenges. In some states, they're aimed at stopping the counting. In others, to continue it. It's likely Trump will ask for recounts in Wisconsin and possibly Georgia. Recounts are available to the trailing candidate if the margin is 1% or less. Mara Liasson, NPR News.
Trump is also asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene in Pennsylvania's ballot counting. The court has twice refused to do so and has let a Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling stand. NPR's Nina Totenberg says mailed ballots postmarked by Election Day can count if they're received by Friday.
The court's previous decisions, one on a tie vote, the other on a vote of 5-3, refused to block the decision of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and its interpretation of the state constitution. But lawyers for Trump note that the High Court still has before it a petition seeking full review of the question, and it's now asking the justices to intervene in much the way the court did in Bush versus Gore 20 years ago. Given the election results, the vote in Pennsylvania may well determine the next president of the United States, the Trump campaign said, and the U.S. Supreme Court, not the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, should have the final say. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
There have been protests in several U.S. cities as demonstrators demand that Trump stop his efforts to interfere in the counting of legally cast ballots. In New York City, police arrested about 20 protesters. In Minneapolis, demonstrators took over a freeway for hours before police intervened. In Portland, Oregon, police declared a riot as hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets. The National Guard was called out. The U.S. is now averaging about 86,000 new coronavirus infections each day, the most since the pandemic began. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. Will Stone has more.
Nationally, cases have gone up by about 45% on average over the past 2 weeks. In the Midwest and the Northeast, that increase is more than 60%. As of Tuesday, more than 52,000 COVID patients were now hospitalized. The last time hospitals had this many patients, it was early August. But unlike the summer, the spike in hospitalizations is more widespread, with big increases in different regions, from New Mexico to North Dakota to Ohio.
Will Stone reporting. This is NPR News.
WJCT News 89.9 is sponsored in part by Humana, offering a variety of plans to fit your needs. Information at 904-303-2505.
The time is 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. There are razor-thin margins and votes still being counted in key battleground states across the country. But one of those states is not Florida. Brendan Byrne explores why.
Memories of the 2018 recounts and 2000's Bush v. Gore were fresh on Florida voters' minds on Election Day, but votes in the state were quickly tallied with little hiccups. University of Central Florida political scientist Aubrey Jewett said a decisive Trump victory and the process by which Florida counts ballots kept the state out of national headlines.
Florida has a lot of experience with mail ballots. We've allowed mail ballots for years now. And we also allow supervisors of election to start counting those mail ballots much earlier than Election Day, like 10 days before.
A handful of states like Pennsylvania had to wait until Election Day to count mail-in ballots due to state law. While the Associated Press and NPR have called Florida for Trump, it's now up to the Secretary of State to certify the official results. I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
And right now in Jacksonville, mostly cloudy sky. It's 69 degrees. We'll be in the upper 70s this afternoon. Partly sunny with a small chance of rain anytime after 11 this morning. Wind out of the northeast about 10 miles per hour, upper 60s tonight. And for Friday, a 40% chance of rain, a high near 80, and a northeast breeze.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jones Day, an integrated partnership collaboratively providing legal services for more than a century. 43 offices, 5 continents, serving clients as one firm worldwide. Learn more at jonesday.com.
Northeast Florida is changing, and your votes proved it. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, we'll tell you why Duval is going blue vol, just as the counties around it keep getting more red. Give us a call. It's 549-2937. Then later, we'll follow along as a local attorney helps legal aid by running an incredible 6 marathons in a row. But first this hour, the latest numbers on the pandemic in Florida, 821,000 and plus cases of COVID in the state. That's an increase of nearly 4,500 over yesterday, with a positive rate around the state at 7.75%. The local rate is lower, thankfully. And the statewide death toll is just over 17,000 people in Florida from coronavirus. Well, this morning, ballot counting is still going on in several key states around the country to determine who won the presidency. Of course, the pandemic is the reason for this high number of mail-in ballots in the first place. Meanwhile, we do have a final result in Florida. President Trump comfortably carried the state with over 51% of the vote. At the same time, though, in North Florida, our part of the state, we saw one big change. Duval County leaped left, voting for Joe Biden for president. It's the first time this city has chosen a Democrat for president in nearly 50 years, not since Jimmy Carter in 1976. But while voters in the area picked Biden to top their ticket, local Democrats lost in all of the local down ballot races. We're going to take a closer look at this state of local politics right now as we welcome Daniel Henry, chair of the Duval Dems. Daniel, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. How are you?
I'm great. Good to have you on the show. Also with us, reporter Andrew Pantazzi of the Florida Times-Union. He's been crunching these numbers and analyzing them in the newspaper. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Daniel.
Give us a call as we talk about Blue Vol and the rest of Florida's votes on this election week. We need to call it now, an election week. 549-2937. Give us a call. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. And our Facebook page is open. Daniel Henry, chair of the Duval Democrats, I want to begin with you. A big increase in Democratic registration is being credited in part for turning this city blue election night at the top of the ticket. As you look at how the votes came in, why do you think more Democrats turned out and Republicans to vote for Joe Biden in Jacksonville this cycle?
I think for the last 4 years, we've gotten a front row seat as to what happens when you elect someone that is uniquely unqualified to be president of the United States. And from time to time again, with the COVID-19 response, with the recession that we are now in, with healthcare and criminal justice and racial inequality, all on the ballot, and finally the moral decency of this country, I think a lot of people made decisions for a number of those issues, but had a gut check and said, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? And is this the direction I want the country to move forward with for another 4 years? Jacksonville made the decision that Joe Biden and Senator Harris were the best candidates to be able to move this country forward. We spent a lot of time registering new Democrats to vote, in addition to signing up a lot of low propensity voters for vote by mail. This was an effort that we've been doing over the course of the last 2 years. 2018 was the first indication of that. To this election solidifies that. So it's something that we're very proud of. But Melissa, I think people really got an up-close view as to what happens when you elect someone that is not qualified for the position, and how Vice President Biden and Senator Harris will bring a sense of normalcy again.
All right, so you are taking a victory lap for that result in Duval County, Daniel, but even though Joe Biden won Duval by about 4 points, it didn't lift up any of your candidates down ballot. The city council race, District 4, the Democrat Nicole Ham lost there. The Democratic candidate for Duval County Clerk of Courts, Jimmy Midyett, lost to Republican Jody Phillips. All of the candidates for state representative in our area lost to Republicans. John Rutherford easily beat his challenger, Donna Deegan. So why were you not able to translate these victories into down ballot victories?
Yeah, I think that's a completely fair question. One thing I like to remind people that is, even though Democrats have a voter advantage in this county, we've always had an issue about turnout. That's the one thing that has always held us back. In this election, we were able to beat that trend and able to turn out in numbers that we were able to win this county. And we had amazing candidates that were running down ballot, just like you mentioned, in addition to all our state house candidates running in every single race. But listen, Jacksonville is gerrymandered. That's a reality as to how our districts are drawn. And it was a very tall hill that a lot of these candidates decided to run in. I'm amazingly proud of the effort that they took in, because I think it was important to them to ensure that they shared the Democratic message for their communities and why they thought they were a better candidate than the incumbents that were sitting in those seats. But a lot of those races were going to be difficult for them to be able to win. I'm immensely proud of their ability for them to be able to be very competitive up until the final minute. And I think it lays a great foundation for us to be able to build on top of that, because we will continue to register more voters to vote. We will continue to get more Democrats to sign up for vote by mail. We will continue to try to convey the Democratic message to non-party affiliated voters. This doesn't stop. We're going to work very hard to be able to bring some successes in upcoming elections in 2022 and 2023. So that's what we're focused on.
We'll go to your calls in a moment. Wherever you stand politically, give us a call. It's 549-2937 as we look at the way Northeast Florida voted this election week. Let's go to Andrew Pantazzi of the Florida Times-Union now. Andrew, you've been looking at these numbers both in Duval County and in the surrounding counties, the counties around the urban core. What are you finding as you look at the numbers? Okay, and it looks like we've lost Andrew Pantazzi, but as we try to...
Sorry, I was muted so I would not
okay.
have any background noise.
I hear you.
I did not realize it.
So
okay.
You go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so like you were saying earlier, we are seeing that Joe Biden did very well in Duval County. In fact, if you compare 2016 to 2020 with how Trump did against Clinton and how Trump did against Biden, Biden netted, he gained the most votes in Duval out of any county in the state. What we also see, though, is it just didn't matter because Biden did worse almost everywhere else in the state by a pretty significant amount. So despite Duval voting for Joe Biden and that being a significant shift, he gained more than 20,000 votes here compared to Clinton. It just wasn't enough to account for the overwhelming reduction in margin everywhere else in the state of Florida. And so that kind of gives, I think, a bit of an identity crisis for the Florida Democrats because there's not one thing that they can try to fix. There's not one, there's not like they can go with some self-help book and say, oh, well, all you had to do was go to Miami-Dade and do this, or all you had to do was, go to the rural areas or the ex-urban areas or the suburban areas. They really failed everywhere outside of Northeast Florida and Orlando and Hillsborough and Pinellas, which would be Tampa and St. Pete. Everywhere else in the state, they lost by pretty significant numbers votes Duval, the main thing I'm looking at is these voters. I don't think we saw a blue vol. I think what we saw was more voters voted for Joe Biden than voted for Donald Trump. And there was a bit of persuasion going on. This is more than just turnout. These were people who, when they got to the very next race on their ballot, which was the county clerk race, which was also countywide, and so this one did not deal with some of the gerrymandered issues that Daniel was touching on, they voted Republican or they skipped it. It ended up being that Jody Phillips was one of the most popular Republicans on the ballot. And so you're seeing voters are not yet Democrats who come to the ballot and they say, I'm going to vote Democrat all the way through. These were voters who came to the ballot and said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden.
So Andrew, ticket splitting, that was real then, wasn't it? Which we tend to not see as much of that in recent elections. But you think there might have been some of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly ticket splitting going on in Duval County. People are complicated people. When you look at City Council District 4, which is a Republican district, even Joe Biden did not win the district. He lost it by 1,700 votes. But the Republican there, Kevin Carrico, had almost the same amount of votes as Donald Trump. And Nicole Ham had fewer votes, which says either people were ticket splitting or they were skipping that race when they got to that one. And that was one of the further down on your ballot races. So it's possible it was partly due to undervotes. Then there are other places where, again, Jody Phillips got more votes than Donald Trump nearly everywhere in the county. So it was people voting for him who were not voting for Donald Trump for the county clerk's race. So there's still going to be a lot of that. Duval is not yet, this is not some inexorable force that has occurred here. To a large degree, while this was, I think, disappointing for Democrats down ballot, there's also a bit of credit probably to be given to local Democrats because this means they had to persuade voters who are not naturally persuaded to vote Democratic to do so at least at the top of the ticket. To me, this is not just demographics have decided this or Republicans are leaving Duval County. We're also seeing Clay, St. John's, and Nassau becoming less Republican at the same time. So I think there's more going on here, but it's not yet enough. I think Democrats can take any kind of victory in the fact that Biden won Duval without also seeing there's going to be a lot more work ahead for future elections. And those elections are going to come upon us quickly. 2022 has already begun to a large degree when we have our next U.S. Senate election in Florida and our next governor election in Florida.
If you're just tuning in, as we speak with Andrew Pantazzi of the Times-Union and Daniel Henry, who chairs the Duval County Democrats, let us know your thoughts about how the vote shook out in Florida as we await national results in the presidential race. It's 549-2937. Now, Andrew, as you said, white flight out of the city to the suburbs doesn't necessarily account for the changes, the political changes in Duval County altogether, although people are commenting about that on our Facebook page. That's what they perceive as driving a lot of this. But Daniel Henry, I want to read a couple of tweets coming into the show from listeners. Here's one from a listener. He sent it as a DM. The Florida Democratic Party needs to be exposed for its malfeasance. We are a 50-50 state, but Dems keep getting shut out of power election after election, he says. Here's another DM from a listener. We need to admit that for the Democrats to start winning local races, they need to get better commercials. They need the shot of the candidate walking with cops and smiling with firefighters. I don't think they realize how it comes down to visuals. The GOP uses the same firm for all of their local candidates to produce these ads. Daniel Henry, what about that?
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to this election is something that was in the making for the last 2 years. We have been spending an enormous amount of time not only registering new Democrats to vote, but also getting a lot of Democrats that don't traditionally vote in any election to actually vote. that is one of the main reasons I think we were able to get the level of turnout that we're able to get. We know we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that that also translates down ballot. Andrew has a point about the clerk's race. We lost that by about 14,000 votes. So it does come down to a lot of like voter education about voting down ballot and encouraging people to realize that every single race on the ballot matters. Jimmy Midyett ran a very competitive race than we've ever seen in a clerk of courts race in this city. I think everyone kind of realized that with the level of coverage that they both received. And future elections will allow more opportunities for us to be able to garner more successes here in Duval County. But one thing I will say is that this community is changing in a way that is making us a lot more diverse, a lot more young, and we're engaging voters that otherwise have a lot of times kind of sat out these types of races or really haven't been as active and engaged. City politics, I think, for the last year and a half have really truly shown how the electorate through their voices can really have an impact in the decisions that people make. So that it will be able for us to be able to kind of translate in local races to localize it. I think people get a lot more engaged in those races and how it directly affects them, because always in these types of presidential races, everything gets nationalized. Everyone kind of thinks about the top of the ticket. It's hard for down ballot races to kind of get the same level of attention that they otherwise have. But Andrew has done a really great analysis on some of the district numbers, how they turned out and how they voted for Biden. And I think for some of the races, because I think half of the city council seats we were able to have Joe Biden win them, whereas the other half we didn't. That presents some opportunities for us in the future. And we're going to be making sure that we look forward to how we can get down ballot races and down ballot candidates to be able to get over the finish line.
Give us a call, everyone, 549-2937. John is in Green Cove Springs. Hey, John, good morning from Clay County.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm really from Bradford County. I drive a big rig. But anyway,
Okay.
My comment was that Democrats missed the ball completely in a sense. If you're voting primarily because of the coronavirus, you obviously go for Biden. But if you're voting for the economy, you're like, the state of Florida is always pro-business, you vote Republican. That's the main issue, nothing else. The rest of it, well, that's local. But the main one for president is, if you believe coronavirus like I do is a serious item, then I voted for Biden, but I'm Republican. But if I'm voting primarily for business, it would be Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Thank you, John. Andrew Pantazzi, the polling that has been released on this election nationally bears that out, what John just said. If you see COVID as the top issue this election, you're probably more likely to vote for Joe Biden. Trump voters have cited the economy as their top concern. That shows you the divide.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he's spot on that there's often these kind of divides when we get to elections, and usually voters who think the economy is the most important vote Republican, but I think we saw even more of a stark divide because of the coronavirus and the impact that it's had both on public health and on the economy. So there's almost also a part of me that wonders, in the polling, people who say they're worried about coronavirus, if some of them are also concerned about the economy, yet they were favoring Joe Biden, but they like kind of use the term coronavirus as their top issue to encapsulate that. But yeah, that's absolutely right. There's still kind of that divide going on in Florida. What's interesting to me is how different, that Florida is so different from Georgia, even that we're now to the right of Georgia. We're about even with Texas, that, we're not even near, we're not anywhere near the median of the nation anymore.
Nick is on the north side. Hi, Nick. Good morning to you.
Hey.
Hey, go ahead.
I wanted to make the point that there's a precept in science, in the behavioral sciences, and I think it's also true in the hard sciences, that says that when something is being observed, it behaves differently than if it's not being observed. And what I'm getting at is when it comes to polling, the polls always seem to underestimate or overestimate the amount of people who are going to vote for the Democratic presidential candidate, whether it was Hillary Clinton last time, whether it was Al Gore in 2000, whether it was Trump this time. It never seems to go the other way. And I've got a theory for this. The reason behind this, it comes back to this precept of being observed. What's happening is someone, a pollster calls a voter and says, are you voting for Trump or are you voting for Biden? And the person on the other end of the line answering the question thinks to himself, well, I don't want this person asking me this question to think I'm an idiot, so I'm going to say I'm voting for Biden, okay? Then that voter gets in the voting booth and closes the curtain behind them, and the spike comes out, and the teeth come out, and they vote for Donald Trump or whoever the mean, nasty Republican is. And so I guess that's the point I was trying to make, the poll.
All right, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Pollsters are getting hammered right now, Daniel. That said, let's wait and see what the final vote tally is around the country, and we may get a slightly clearer picture. I don't know how much polling was done locally before this election, but let me read, if I could, I want to get a few tweets and emails on the air as we talk about how Duval County voted Tuesday night. Catherine tweets the show, we're only blue vol on the POTUS race. Does that really make us blue? Carrie tweets the show, regarding the Donna Deegan race for Congress, I'm disappointed in how many people still have animosity toward Deegan from her divorce. It's the only reason they told me they didn't like her. It's been 20 years since she got a divorce. Shades of Hillary Clinton. From Fanny, Duval went blue for the national, but that didn't translate to local elections. One more tweet. Rutherford beat Deegan. Fisher beat Marcus for state rep. I wonder if this was partially Republicans disavowing Trump rather than going truly blue vol. Okay. One more tweet. If Trump is looking for someone to blame about Duval, I would think it's Mayor Lenny Curry's fault. Okay. Lots of feedback there. Daniel, did you guys do polling in this local election, in the local elections?
Melissa, we didn't do polling in this local election. We spent a lot of our money and resources making sure we got out the vote all across the county, so that way all of our races could be competitive. We always know that people don't necessarily vote down the ballot for a particular party. Jacksonville has a long tradition of kind of bucking that and choosing the person that they may particularly like or skipping the race altogether. But one thing I want to kind of reiterate, particularly with the win that we were able to get in the presidential races, this is something that hasn't happened in 44 years. It's not it's a long fought type of win that we've been working towards for years and years. We knew that we were capable of doing it. It shows not only that if we're able to get the level of investment, the level of field organizers, the level of GOTV activity, that we can win this county, that it is possible. We showed that in 2018. We again reiterated that in 2020, and I think that leaves a perfect foundation for us to be able to have future successes in local races.
Stan on the west side. Hi, Stan. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Stan on the west side, yes. And so I was wondering if we could if one of the interviewers could talk about how Trump has done with the black vote in 2020 and the Latino vote in 2020. He's done better with that in 2020 than he did in 2016. And I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm looking at people I know. I'm an African American, and they're talking about not just voting for Trump, but their disdain of the Democratic Party. And I think it's scarier that they voted for Trump, not because he's so great, but that they don't like the Democratic Party and how they've been treated there. And so I think that in 2022 and then in 2024, if that's not addressed, that's going to be something we really have to, Biden really has to overperform for African Americans in his 4 years, because he doesn't have a good record already. And so that's going to really bite him if he does not address that or make it public of what he has done for the African American community in his 4 years if he gets elected.
Thanks, Stan. That's Stan on the west side. That's good feedback, Andrew. At the same time, Joe Biden is closing in as we speak on an electoral college victory, and it does look as though voters primarily black voters in Michigan, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and a couple of other places are likely to be the ones who put him over the top.
Yeah, that's right. He does have also a significant popular vote margin, and it does look like he is closing in on an electoral college victory. But I think Stan is right in that one thing we saw here locally is that the Democratic voter base became more white, more Hispanic, more Asian, that there was a lot of persuasion going on with people who don't normally vote Democratic, but that you were getting actually less turnout from black voters, and that there is maybe a fear that there's been such a taking for granted of black Democratic voters that Democrats should really be hesitant to not put in the work that's necessary or to take for granted, because as we're seeing right now with the turnout in Philadelphia, or as we're seeing in Georgia right now around Atlanta, black voters are critical to Democratic successes.
Yeah, the vote in Atlanta, which is being counted right now, and we could have a result there by noon, that could be decisive too. Although it's looking like Georgia will be extremely narrow either way, but we'll be watching out for that today. 549-2937, Kathy in Middleburg. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for calling.
I live in Clay County, and I know that they started counting the mail-in ballots on the 19th of October. Now, those late mail-in ballots, are they still being counted if they're postmarked on November 3rd?
You know, that is an excellent question. Daniel, Florida got its result easily election night because since the debacle of 2000, the state has done a lot of work to shore up its election systems. Can you answer Kathy's question?
Yeah, I think that's a model for us to be able to, for other states to kind of follow that same level of trend of getting their ballots counted more than 10 days before the election actually starts. I think that went a long way for us being able to know the ultimate results in this state within the first couple hours of the election count. A lot of these states expanded vote by mail for the first time than in any other election. And they were really kind of setting up the processes for them to be able to kind of deal with the influx load of vote by mail ballots that they were receiving. So this kind of lays the foundation for them to know what they need in order for them to be able to have the resources to count these votes a lot faster. And I think it would go a long way of ensuring that people have the certainty of knowing that every single vote is going to get counted.
Mm-hmm. All righty. And, you know, Andrew, we are waiting the result, the national result. And as we do that, earlier in the discussion, somebody mentioned 2022. Florida, of course, went for Trump in this cycle. Let's talk about the next couple of years. As Governor Ron DeSantis positions himself for re-election, we've got a couple of senators up for re-election, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott. Things are going to be interesting for the next couple of years in this state. And whether or not the statewide Democrats can mobilize and do a better job putting up candidates to take on the Republican incumbents, we'll have to see. But what are your thoughts about what we can expect?
Well, I think one thing that people who would normally donate money to the progressive side might be looking at is the success of the minimum wage amendment in 2020. That we saw 61% of voters the same night they voted for Donald Trump by a convincing margin in Florida also voted to raise the minimum wage in Florida to $15 by 2026. We've seen this happen kind of repeatedly in Florida, where ballot initiatives with progressive goals are passing even as progressive candidates are failing. And so there may be some efforts to put more progressive initiatives on the ballot, whether that includes Medicaid expansion or legalizing cannabis for recreational use. There may be other issues like that some donors start saying would be a better, value for their dollar. The other thing that is going to happen with, I think, the internal fighting in the Democratic Party to determine who runs for what race. Again, we've got a governor's race, we've got an attorney general's race, we've got one Senate race, the CFO, as well as the Ag Commissioner, Nikki Fried, whether she runs for re-election or goes for governor. Nikki Fried, the only statewide Democrat in Florida, did not endorse raising the minimum wage. She was not willing to kind of go out there, even as 61% of voters in a Republican state were willing to. So there's kind of, I think, going to be an identity question. I think there'll be some push from legislators like Anna Eskamani in Orlando, who flipped a Republican seat in 2018, but has taken a more leftward stance in saying Democrats should believe in some more ideological policy views rather than relying on, I think, just the, vote for us because we're nice people type of thing. And I think there's going to be a fight brewing there. We've already seen John Morgan, the trial lawyer, come out and say he thought that Nikki Fried's stance was disqualifying as a Democrat, that she wasn't willing to support.
What about that, Daniel Henry? What about that? Why are statewide Democrats like Nikki Fried running away from the issues that animate their base?
I believe Nikki Fried was on record on supporting Amendment 2. The state party was on record on supporting Amendment 2 as well. And we did a lot of voter education here, even locally, to make sure that voters are educated about all the potential amendments that are on the ballot. Andrew's right, though. Single issues always, particularly in this state, are a lot more popular. Amendment 4, this last election that gave returning citizens the ability for them to be able to vote, is one of the most popular amendments that have passed in the state. It was even more popular than Ron DeSantis, that was ultimately elected in that ballot. But with upcoming elections, I think it creates an opportunity for us to be able to kind of start the narrative a lot sooner than we always have. Florida is always going to be close. I think these elections always end up coming down to turnout. When you have such a polar opposite between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the ballot, people had a decision to make as to what they eventually wanted. But with the results that we saw across the state, I think it really came down to which party was able to get the level of turnout that they needed in order for us to get over the finish line. And for Donald Trump, he was able to get the votes that he needed on Election Day in order for him to get over the mound. And Miami-Dade obviously was a little bit disappointing in the turnout that we saw.
All right, Jack in Fernandina Beach. Hi, Jack. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Well, I wanted to let you know I'm a Republican. I live up in Fernandina Beach, and I was polled 4 times for my choice for president. 3 of them were kind of robocalls, and this is press 1 for this, press 2 for the other. And surprisingly enough, I received a call from the Republican National Committee wanting to know who I was going to vote for, and she was floored when I said Biden. And she says, would you be willing to give any money to us? And I said, no, thank you. I gave it to the Lincoln Project. And she was very polite and hung up.
So you're a Republican who voted for Biden. Why did you do that?
I didn't like Trump's stance about the military, about John McCain, and calling the people who died losers or suckers.
All right. Thanks, Jack.
To that point, if I
Go ahead, Andrew.
Respond to what Jack was saying.
Sure.
One of the things that was interesting being in the canvassing board, so the first ballots they start counting are the military overseas ballots. They're the first ones that go out. And they're the only ballots allowed after Election Day to be received are the military ones. And I was talking with Robert Phillips, the chief elections officer in the supervisor's office.
2 McMuffins and a milk, please, ma'am.
Jack is at the McDonald's drive-thru. Thanks, Jack. Let me hang up on Jack, and I appreciate his call. Andrew, finish your thought, and then we'll thank you both for joining us.
Yeah, what I was just going to say is one of the things we were talking about that was surprising to us is how many of those military ballots it seemed were going for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Generally, I think that kind of bucks a trend of military and those who support the military voting for the Republican. Again, we were talking about the economy versus coronavirus. Usually that's another one, is people who say the military or national defense is their biggest issue are voting Republican. I can't speak to how it was the rest of the state because obviously Joe Biden did very poorly across the state. But in Duval, it seems that military voters were going showing for Biden over Donald.
That certainly was a bit of a factor. And I want to thank you both, Andrew Pantazzi of the Times-Union, Daniel Henry of the Duval Dems. Guys, thanks so much. And we'll keep watching the vote tally around the country today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much more still ahead later. Restaurants getting creative to stay afloat in this pandemic. That includes getting somewhat into the grocery business. But up next.
So each day we'll start at a courthouse and run to the next courthouse, which happens to be about a marathon distance away. And we'll end up Saturday, November the 21st, in front of the Duval County Courthouse.
You won't believe this one. A Jacksonville attorney is running 6 marathons in a row, all to raise money for Jack's Legal Aid. We'll run alongside Freed to Run next.
Jacksonville Daily Record's editor Karen Bruni Mathis's goal is to be the first to report new projects changing Jacksonville's economy and development landscape. Be the first to know breaking business news Monday through Friday in the Jacksonville Daily Record and at jacksdailyrecord.com.
Turntable Tuesday can now be heard on Anthology on the WJCT app and 89.9 HD3. For the best on vinyl, listen to Anthology Tuesdays at 9. Turntable Tuesday, part of the Jacksonville Music Experience.
Well, not even a pandemic can stop Jacksonville Area Legal Aid and the Freed to Run multi-marathon fundraiser to support it. Gunster shareholder attorney Mike Freed is hitting the road November 16th in Tallahassee, and he'll complete a marathon every single day for 6 days, finishing at the Duval County Courthouse on the 21st. I welcomed Mike Freed, Jim Kowalski, who heads up Jack's Area Legal Aid, and Judge Hugh Carithers to hear more. Mike, Jim, Judge Carithers, good to have all three of you on the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, Mike Freed, let's begin with you. You are the star of Freed to Run, of course. This is the 4th time you have undertaken a run to benefit Jacksonville Area Legal Aid and their pediatric medical legal partnership. You've been doing this, this is something that I remember talking to you a few years ago, and when you explained what you were planning on doing, I thought, how in the heck is he going to do that? But not only did you do it, you're expanding it. So tell us all about Freed to Run and what's going to be happening.
Sure, and I'll push back on being the star. I think I'm certainly the catalyst, but the stars are the families that deal with these problems, and the lawyers at Legal Aid and the pro bono lawyers that we are blessed to be able to help support. But I run 6 marathons over 6 days, and first year it was really just me. Now it's teams of relayers from the community that will join me at different segments, some running a whole marathon, some running relays, and all of them raising funds that are matched 125% by the Baptist Health Foundation and that are going into this endowment to fund this program in perpetuity.
How many miles total are you going to run?
157.2.
Gosh. And now, as I recall, when you started this, you ran all the way from Jacksonville to Tallahassee. Is that happening again?
Yeah, only it's in reverse. So I'll drive to Tallahassee, and then Dennis Harrison with Jala mapped out a great course that goes courthouse to courthouse, which is apropos of the access to justice we're trying to achieve. And so each day we'll start at a courthouse, Florida Supreme Court, and run to the next courthouse, which happens to be about a marathon distance away. And we'll end up Saturday, November the 21st at about 3 o'clock p.m. in front of the Duval County Courthouse.
Unbelievable. Jim Kowalski, Jack's Area Legal Aid. This is such a boon to your organization. Mike is raising money and goodwill and lots of awareness. Tell us how this will benefit Legal Aid.
Sure. So first off, thanks to Mike and all of our co-sponsors, AT&T, Elite Parking, the Fannin Johnson Group of Wells Fargo Advisors, Florida Blue, Gunster, the Jaguars Foundation, Nemours, and ViStar Credit Union. So we've got some great sponsors and some great co-chairs. This year, one of the easiest ways to demonstrate this is with the housing crisis that we're currently going through. As we know, it's difficult for the physicians and staff at Wolfson's to treat their pediatric patients if the patient and his or her family doesn't have housing security. So this type of medical legal partnership, for example, assists in the ability of the doctors to spot the housing insecurity issues and then refer those cases over to the staff at Jacksonville Area Legal Aid or pro bono lawyers that we coordinate to assist those families with housing insecurity. That keeps the patient on time for their appointments. It keeps the medical treatment going, all of it working in order to achieve the result that we need to have for these children that are going through these medically complex illnesses and being treated at Wolfson's.
And with the pandemic and the ongoing recession we're in, I would think your services and the need to expand them in this community are more critical than ever.
Well, and what we've seen, and this has been reported on locally by the Daily Record and others, is that donations to civil legal aid and pro bono hours are both down as a result of the pandemic and the limitations it has placed on lawyers and the limitations it's placed on us to hold fundraising events. So the fact that Mike is once again doing this and heading out on this route together with teams after team after team is just so critically important, particularly at this time.
Judge Hugh Carithers, you're one of the co-chairs for this event. What are your perspectives on Freed to Run as a jurist?
Oh gosh, this is such a tremendous aid to our entire community, including our legal community. It's been my privilege to try to generate more enthusiasm than ever within the legal community for this process, and people have been coming forward in droves to help support this. And I want to add, in part, that's because it's a blast. It's really a lot of fun to participate in this endeavor, the legal community is very much appreciative of being able to handle legal problems of citizens when they are represented by good lawyers. That is so important. People otherwise don't much know how to navigate the process.
So when you say it's a blast, does that mean you'll be doing some running yourself, Judge? Are you riding shotgun? Yeah?
I'm not going to try to run a marathon, but yes, part of the effort is the last 5K of the last day is an opportunity for lawyers and others to join Mike. We meet up out at the farmers market on West Beaver Street, and we run that last little over 3 miles into the courthouse with him. And it's such an uplifting event to be able to do that. And I do anticipate there'll probably be 100 or so people doing that.
That's exciting. So, Mike, you must be in some pretty intense training right now to pull this off once again.
I am. I mean, I spend a lot more time annoying people with fundraising, and it's paying off this year. We're having our best year, even in a down economy and in a down time. But actually, I was sidelined by COVID for a couple, but kept on running. It wasn't too symptomatic, and now I feel like I'm even in better shape, and hopefully, I'm in a position where I won't be at risk of, getting COVID or giving COVID to anyone along the way.
That's right, and you hope to raise more than $2 million, correct? That would permanently endow this program. Is that right?
Yeah, the deal that Legal Aid reached with Baptist Health Foundation is that we will raise $1 million over 5 years, and they will put $1,250,000 in to match at 125% level, and we are on track to do that.
So everyone, go to the website Freed, F-R-E-E-D, freedtorun.com, and learn more about this incredible effort Attorney Mike Freed of Gunster is making. You can also check out jackslegalaid.org for more. I want to thank you all. This is so exciting to have you back again for another year of Freed to Run. Mike Freed, attorney and marathon runner, Jim Kowalski, CEO of Jax Area Legal Aid, Judge Hugh Carithers, all on the show now. Guys, thanks for spreading the word. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
The USF College of Public Health has been preparing public health experts for 35 years, while fully online for 20-plus years. More about their online undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees at publichealth.usf.edu.
Next time on The World, watching America choose a president from just across the border. A Cuban asylum seeker in Mexico is so tuned into U.S. politics that he knows the number of California's electoral votes. 55. What America's election means to would-be Americans, it's on The World.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, Jack Goldsmith, co-author of After Trump, Reconstructing the Presidency. The book asks, no matter when it happens, what are the difficult questions the next president will face about the much-changed presidency Trump left behind? Goldsmith worked in the George W. Bush administration. His co-author, Bob Bauer, worked in the Obama administration. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
The election night is over. Election week is just getting started. The final result remains on a knife's edge, but it seems the only thing of which we can be certain is more uncertainty. As the counting continues, more of your thoughts and the latest on what we can expect from the courts. That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, many businesses are adapting and innovating as the pandemic continues to impact all of our lives. One is Calford Chop House in the city's urban core. They recently launched the Calford Chop Shop. Now, this is a fresh meat program. You can buy a variety of high quality and exclusive cuts of meat at Calford, everything from a filet mignon to a 28-day dry-aged tomahawk. My goodness. On the line with more, Chef Ian Lynch and Calford Chop House owner Jacques Klemp. Guys, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
So good to have you both on the show. Jacques, let's begin with you as owner of the downtown high-end Calford Chop House. Going strong in this pandemic, but like most restaurants, it looks like you're innovating. So tell us what came to this decision.
Well, you know, we did a lot of research and we traveled across the country looking for the very best cuts of meat. We wanted to be unique and different for Jacksonville, and we feel like we've done that, accomplished it. And of course now, you know, we've got these great cuts of meat that aren't available at all the steakhouses. And with COVID, there are less people eating out. But we thought we would bring our selection of great cuts to people that want to pick it up and cook at home that don't necessarily want to be out. And,
sure.
And that's the reason.
All right. This is something that I think in this time, Ian, people will leap on because more and more people are huddling up at home, you know, especially as the winter comes, and this is a way for them to recreate the kind of meal you serve up in the restaurant at home.
Absolutely. And just like you said, people are maybe a little less comfortable going out. So again, we wanted to be able to provide them maybe with, you know, an almost, you know, restaurant experience. So we provide, you select your cuts. We'll package those up for you. We provide some of our seasonings. Our homemade au jus is provided. We a little bit of roasted garlic, some chopped rosemary. We do a peppercorn blend and some sea salt. And inside the box is a little card with some cooking tips and some instructions. And hopefully you can kind of recreate the Calford experience at home.
Yeah, that's very cool, Ian. And Jacques, you're launching the Calford Chop Shop just as your restaurant celebrates its third birthday, and it was quite a journey toward the opening of your place as you renovated a historic downtown building. What have the past 3 years been like, and what's your strategy going into the next year as hopefully we start to ease out of this pandemic?
Well, yes, the renovation of the building was certainly a huge task, and there's a tremendous amount of people to thank, including our contractors and civil engineers, the city of Jacksonville, DIA, and we got it done. And we were, one thing that Calford Chop House was really successful at is providing a great meal for before a music or entertainment event or Jaguar event or anything that was downtown. And of course, a lot of that has slowed down to almost a stop. So, but I'm still very encouraged. We reopened May the 8th after being closed about 8 weeks, and we were at 25% capacity, then 50%, and now we're at 100%. And we're doing all the things inside the restaurant to provide our guests with what we feel is a safe dining experience. And things have changed, and we're gonna accommodate, do the right thing for our guests and for our staff, so that we can continue to provide a great meal for people that want to dine out.
So people keep eating out safely. You can dine out at the downtown Calford Chop House, or you can order steaks at home, along with letting Executive Chef Ian Lynch be your sous chef. You can do all of this through their website. Check it out, give them a call, and support locally owned businesses. I can't say that enough. Thank you so much, guys, for telling us about the launch of the Calford Chop Shop, owner Jacques Klemp and chef Ian Lynch. What an exciting new initiative, and we're pleased to spread the word here this morning. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much to you both. And happy dining out or dining in, whatever you choose. That's our show. Thanks to all of our guests and callers. Our producer is Heather Schatz. Josh Torres likes a good steak. He's our director. Our news director is Jessica Palumbo. Bill Bortsfield is our digital editor. Keep those emails coming. All our feedback is much appreciated. Send it to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. If you missed any part of this broadcast, it'll air again tonight at 8 o'clock on the radio. Or you can catch our podcast up later today, wherever you listen to your favorite shows. I'm Melissa Ross. This is First Coast Connect on 89.9. We'll be back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow for our Friday Media Roundtable. And keep listening to NPR throughout the day with regular updates on the vote count in a handful of key states that will determine the presidency. That's coming your way shortly. Have a great Thursday.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.